In many parts of the world, borders follow rivers, mountains, or long histories of kingdoms and cultures. In Africa, a lot of borders are straight lines, cutting across deserts, forests, and peoples who share language and traditions. Many were drawn in European capitals by men who had never set foot on the land they were dividing. Those lines still shape wars, politics, and identities today. To understand why Africa's borders look like this, we need to go back to the 19th century, to an age of explorers, traders, and empires racing to carve up a continent. In this video, we'll explore the scramble for Africa, how it began, how European powers divided the continent, and what legacy those borders left behind. Before the scramble, Africa, and early contact. Before the late 1800s, European control in Africa was actually limited. For centuries, African societies, empires, kingdoms, and city-states traded with Europe and the Middle East. In West Africa, states like the Ashanti Empire and the Sokoto Caliphate were powerful and organized. In East Africa, Swahili city-states traded with Arabia, India, and beyond. In the Sahel and Central Africa, caravan routes linked desert, savanna, and forest. In the south, kingdoms like the Zulu and others were expanding and fighting for land. European presence was mostly along the coast, trading posts on the Atlantic for gold, ivory, and, tragically, enslaved people. Small settlements and forts, but not deep inland control in most regions. In the early 19th century, the Atlantic slave trade was gradually abolished by European states. Some people hoped this would lead to more legitimate commerce in African goods rather than people. Missionaries, explorers, and traders pushed inland, but there was no full-scale conquest yet. So what changed? New motives, new technologies, new ambitions. By the mid-1800s, several forces pushed Europe toward a more aggressive role in Africa. First, economics. The Industrial Revolution created a huge demand for raw materials: rubber, cotton, copper, palm oil, minerals. New markets for European manufactured goods. Industrial powers like Britain, France, and later Germany wanted secure sources of these resources and places to sell their products. Second, competition and prestige. European powers were locked in rivalry. Colonies were seen as proof of national greatness. If a rival seized territory, your country didn't just lose land, it lost status. Third, technology. Advances like steamships, which made river travel easier. Quinine used against malaria, which made it safer for Europeans to survive in tropical regions. More powerful firearms and machine guns, which gave European armies a huge military advantage over many African armies. Fourth, ideology. Many Europeans believed in ideas of racial superiority and a civilizing mission, claiming they were bringing progress, Christianity, and modernity, while ignoring or belittling African cultures and achievements. Together, these forces turned Africa from a region of coastal trade into a target for full territorial control. The shock that started the race: King Leopold and the Congo. The scramble for Africa didn't begin with a formal declaration, but one figure symbolized the new age: King Leopold II of Belgium. In the 1870s, Leopold hired the explorer Henry Morton Stanley to secure treaties and trading rights in the Congo region of Central Africa. Leopold claimed he was creating a humanitarian and scientific project. In reality, he intended to build a personal empire. Using treaties that local leaders often did not fully understand, diplomatic pressure, and European recognition, Leopold turned a vast area, more than 70 times the size of Belgium, into his private possession, the Congo Free State. In the following years, forced labour, violence, and brutal exploitation, especially in the rubber trade, led to the deaths and suffering of millions of Congolese. News of these abuses would later cause international scandal. Leopold's actions sent a clear message to other European powers. Africa was open for the taking. If you did not move quickly, a rival might seize huge territories. The race was on. Berlin 1884–85, dividing a continent on paper. As explorers, companies, and soldiers pushed into Africa, their governments worried that chaotic grabs could spark war in Europe. To avoid direct conflict among themselves, European powers decided to sit down and negotiate. In 1884–1885, the German Chancellor Otto von Bismarck hosted the Berlin Conference. Representatives from major European states, including Britain, France, Germany, Portugal, Belgium, and others, met to set rules for claiming African territory. No African leaders were invited. The conference did not draw every border, but it laid down key principles. A European power had to show effective occupation, some degree of administration or control, to claim territory. Coastal claims could extend inland along rivers or trade routes. Powers were encouraged to notify each other when they took new territory, to avoid accidental wars. On maps in European capitals, diplomats and officials drew lines and coloured in vast areas. France aimed to create a belt of territory from the Atlantic across the Sahara to the Red Sea. Britain dreamed of a chain from Cape to Cairo, from South Africa to Egypt. Germany, Italy, Portugal, and others sought to join the imperial game. The results were often straight lines across the map, geometric borders that cut through ethnic groups, trade networks, and environmental zones with little regard for local realities. On paper, Europe had agreed how to divide Africa. On the ground, conquest and resistance were just beginning. Conquest and resistance on the ground. After Berlin, the scramble accelerated. Over roughly 3 decades, almost the entire continent, except for Ethiopia and Liberia, came under European control. Some examples: Britain took control of large areas, Egypt and Sudan in the northeast, Nigeria and the Gold Coast, now Ghana, in West Africa, and colonies in southern and eastern Africa, including South Africa, Kenya, and more. France built a vast empire stretching across West and Central Africa, from Senegal to Chad and beyond, and also controlled parts of North Africa, like Algeria and Tunisia. Germany claimed territories in present-day Tanzania, Namibia, Cameroon, and Togo. Portugal held Angola and Mozambique. Italy claimed parts of the Horn of Africa. This process was not peaceful. European powers fought wars against African states and peoples who resisted. The Zulu Kingdom in southern Africa fought the British. The Ashanti Empire in West Africa resisted British expansion. In the Sudan, the Mahdist movement fought against Egyptian and British forces. In Ethiopia, Emperor Menelik II famously defeated an Italian invasion at the Battle of Adwa in 1896, preserving Ethiopia's independence. Sometimes treaties were used, sometimes direct military conquest, sometimes one African group was used to fight another. New colonial borders often grouped rival communities together or split related ones apart. Inside these new colonies, European authorities imposed new legal systems, taxation in cash, forcing people into wage labour, land policies that privileged settlers and companies, forced labour in many regions, especially for infrastructure and plantations. The goal was clear: extract resources and secure strategic control, often with minimal investment in local development. Borders, independence, and lasting challenges. By around 1914, on the eve of World War I, the scramble for Africa was largely complete. The continent had been divided into a patchwork of colonies under European flags. In the mid-20th century, after 2 world wars and growing anti-colonial movements, African countries gained independence, mostly between the 1950s and 1970s. But when they did, a crucial question arose: what to do with the borders drawn during the scramble? In 1964, the Organisation of African Unity, now the African Union, adopted a principle. Most colonial borders would be accepted as they were. The logic was that trying to redraw all the lines to match ethnic or historical boundaries would risk endless wars. This decision helped avoid some conflicts, but keeping colonial borders also had consequences. Many African states contained dozens or even hundreds of ethnic groups and languages within their borders. Some communities were split across 2 or more countries. Access to resources like rivers, ports, or minerals was unevenly distributed. These factors did not automatically cause conflict, but they made state-building harder. When combined with Cold War rivalries, authoritarian rulers, economic pressures, and local tensions, they contributed to civil wars, secession attempts, and border disputes in various regions. Even today, when you look at a map of Africa, many of the straight lines and odd shapes reflect decisions taken in European capitals around 1884 to 1914. not the choices of the people who lived there. From the outside, Africa's modern borders can look like simple lines on a map. In reality, they are the product of centuries of trade, empires, resistance, and a few intense decades when European powers carved up a continent to serve their own interests. Those borders did not determine Africa's future on their own, but they set the stage on which new states had to build nations, identities, and economies after independence. Do you think African countries should have tried to redraw their borders after independence, or was keeping the colonial lines the least bad option? If you found this video helpful, consider subscribing to Atlas of History for more stories about countries, empires, and the borders that still shape our world.